Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today I have with me here copies of Downfall of the Third Reich and Downfall of Empires, two new grand strategic games published by Do It Games and designed by Victor Catala. Now, Downfall of the Third Reich is the game we're going to take a look at today. This is a grand strategic game of the European theater in World War II, playable in about 4 hours. And Downfall of Empires is its brother, grand strategic game of World War I, playable in about 3 hours. We're going to jump in now, take a look at the components, and offer some initial impressions on Downfall of the Third Reich. Start off, I love the cover, a classic, iconic photo of World War II and the fall of the Third Reich and the aptly named Downfall of the Third Reich. We'll talk a little bit again about the hypothetical balance with the game, which I think I have a rough understanding of from kind of learning about the game before it's gotten here too. But let's jump right in and take a look. First, it's got a nice, good bit of heft to the box here, a little bit over 2 inches thick again with the metric measurements here. And we'll take a look at some of the general numbers on the back. Now, I'm comparing this a little bit. I'll do some slight comparisons to Downfall of Empires where I think there's some notable points. The first up here is we'll notice that this is a 2 to 3 player game, whereas Downfall of Empires is a 2 to 4 player game. So again, as you would expect here, if you're playing at 2 players, you're going to have the Axis and the Allies. 3 players, the Allies are going to be split. The Russians are going to break off into their own faction. So you'd be playing Russians, Germans, and the rest of the Allies in the war. So time is longer for this one. Now, Downfall of Empires says, I think, 150 minutes, so 2.5 to 3 hours. This is 240 minutes. Now, I have yet to play this one on Vassal either, so I don't have a sense yet for how that is. But I think that my guess is it's going to be after you've kind of built up speed with the game, you're going to see these games come down to about 4 hours or so. But before that, it's probably going to take a little bit longer as you get kind of fluent with the game systems. And I will point out too, as we look inside, there is a shorter scenario that starts later in the game too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, much like Downfall of Empires, the turns in this game are 3 months, so they're seasonal, and there are 22 turns. Starts in 1940 and it ends in 1945. So you're playing through the scope of the war in Europe. So with that being said, let's jump in now and take a look at it. I'll make some notes on solitaire play as we kind of get going here too. All right, as we go inside, once again, and I mentioned this on the unboxing for Downfall of Empires, but we have baggies and storage tray. How cool is that? And I thought for sure someone would put in the comments how many other games they've played that have storage trays in there, but so far no one's put in a note or a comment that says, yeah, this game had a storage tray in it too. So maybe this is the first time in wargaming history that storage trays have been included in a game. Who knows? Let's take a look at the rule book. Now, the rule book in Downfall of Empires is about 12 pages. This one is a little bit longer, 16 pages. And I would think that actually feels like, and it's very much similar in terms of, we've got table of contents, designer notes in the back, some list of armies here, kind of listing how many there are, and then a rather elaborate and detailed example of play section, which reduces, if you don't consider those as part of the rules, reduces the rules down to page 10 included for the examples. So we have a deployment for the startup and things like that. So if you count that, that's about 7 and 8 pages maybe of rules and things like that altogether. So complexity on this one, I think, my guess is a little bit more than Downfall of Empires. And there are things that are different about the gameplay. For example, diplomacy was an action in Downfall of Empires, but it's not here. They're kind of, the unfolding of the diplomatic scene happens more automatically than it does as you're trying to influence the minor powers in Downfall of Empires. But there are some other actions in here, things like air missions, submarine missions, strategic bombing, lend-lease and things like that, that add a little bit more variety and depth to the operations you can perform, the actions you can perform in this game, as would be expected, I think, of World War II. We've got kind of greater air sphere, greater sea sphere, and things like that. There are U-boat missions, of course, that the Germans can act out on. So a little bit more complexity there in this game than there. We have resources as well. And victory conditions, too. In Downfall of Empires, victory conditions is by victory points. But in this game, countries have surrender conditions. For example, if you take all the supply zones in Germany, Germany surrenders. And victory is determined by that one metric. So if Germany surrenders before the end of the game, then the Allies win. If Germany surrenders on the last turn, it's a draw. If it's get to the end of the game and Germany hasn't surrendered, then the Allies win the game. Let's take a look now at our units. Much like Downfall of Empires, we have 3 counter sheets printed on both sides. These are roughly 5/8 of an inch counters using the US scale here. And like we have with Downfall of Empires, they're really of three types. And I'll show again close-ups as we go through these. We have the units on one type. We have various markers that you're using to kind of control and manage gameplay. And then we have the technology cards. And I think this is a point probably to mention the solitaire element of the game here too. I feel like this game again will play very well solitaire. The only element is the secrecy behind these cards. Which technologies you're developing will be kind of transparent if you're playing all three sides or two sides, depending, Axis and Allies and things like that. But I think there's ways to do that. There was a comment in the last video that mentioned this right here. It says you could randomly pick one of these. And I was thinking, actually, if you're playing solitaire, perhaps you could randomly pick two. If you're going to say, I'm going to develop a technology, you randomly pick two and then choose from one of those two. That might be kind of a cool way to do it. But really nice units, really nice and clean. I love the color palette that's been chosen for this game. It's just really kind of got a very nice, subdued, yet artistic and elegant flair to it. Here we can see British units, Sherman tanks, the US armor here. We've got French, Yugoslavian troops, Belgian troops here. So good representation of all our countries. Backside again, as there is a reduced state, a step system to these units. Now we get, this is the USSR sheet. So we have technologies for the USSR, logistics, advanced tanks, Urals industry, tank industry, all kinds of cool things to imagine developing that give you advantages. These again, kind of just reiterating a comment from Downfall of Empires. I assume this plays out in much the same way, but one of the things that you're always struggling to do, at least I found in Downfall of Empires, is you never have enough actions in your turn. So you're always making really hard choices about where you're going to take your actions and what you're going to do with them. And these technologies are kind of give you future benefits. So sometimes the present is very pressing, but if you focus too much on the present and don't spend actions on these technologies, eventually you're going to get weaker and weaker as the game progresses instead of stronger and stronger. So I think one of the subtleties of learning to play well is figuring out how you balance the future benefit of these technologies with current and pressing needs. But if we look at USSR troops, again, we have infantry and armor. This distinguishes Downfall of Empires because in Downfall of Empires, all the troops were infantry essentially. So in tanks were technology that you had. So this kind of distinguishes between infantry and armor troops. And I believe there's also breakthroughs in this game, so you can extend past with armor, I think it is. I might be overstating things a little bit, but I'm pretty sure there's more of an encirclement and a breakthrough capacity in this game as well. So we have Bulgaria, Hungary as well, and again some markers here to kind of manage turns and things, and our one big turn marker as well. Now we get to the German units, or the Axis units here. We have Romania, Finland, Italy, and Germany. Again, German armor here. These are massive. Look at that, 8 strength points for these. This must be German high-level armor here. Rather elegant. Nice. So again, lots of things. We've got German technology, advanced tanks, similar across there, advanced warships, blitzkrieg technology. Yeah, so this in again says see the rules. This is again that kind of encirclement and breakthrough type of maneuver that you can pull. So my guess is that for the Germans to execute this, they have to develop the blitzkrieg technology in order to be able to do those types of encirclements and things. But again, I may be overstating myself. I'm just kind of getting excited about playing, but I haven't played yet. All right, let's take a look at our reference sheets. Much like Downfall of Empires again, we have 2 identical reference sheets. A quick reference sheet that lists all the different actions that we have here, as well as some of the high frequency information that you're going to need to know. And here again is our list of actions that you can take. Supply, armor production, air missions, submarine missions, reinforcements, development, and lend-lease. And I believe the submarine missions are only for the Axis powers. But again, I might be a little bit off on that. And then our other informational sheets here. This is a nice thick card stock too, so very durable and well done. And here is the thing, again, that I wasn't aware of. And again, these 2 are identical, so just looking at one of them here. This lists as the Stalingrad scenario, and it starts about halfway through the game. So my guess is that this would be something that you could play in a couple of hours. And these are all the starting conditions for it. It says start here and play to the end of the game, and you apply the same victory conditions as in the standard game. So if Germany surrenders before the last turn, Germany loses. Germany surrenders on the last turn, it's a draw. And if Germany's still alive and kicking at the end of the game, Germany has broken the historical precedent and won the game. And that actually probably is a good time to mention too that I feel like from what I've from talking to Artur Zanon, the developer of this game, and he's been talking about both these, Downfall of the Third Reich and Downfall of Empires, the design vision for these games was that they are, again, to use that term, a kind of light hypothetical. You're going to be able to deviate from history to a certain degree, but it's really not a free-for-all where you're going to have, you know, German troops completely dominating the whole map. The ebb and flow of World War II is going to go somewhat along historical lines. There is the capacity perhaps for the Axis forces to do Sea Lion, the invasion of England, or perhaps concentrate more on the Eastern Front, Western Front. So there's room and flexibility to vary from history, but it is a more constrained game than it is kind of a World War II sandbox. It's going to play out roughly along historical lines, and that again is the reason that connects to that victory point. Is that victory condition is if you're still alive and kicking and haven't lost the war as the Germans at the end of the game, you win the game. So that kind of gives you an idea right there that, you know, things, it's not called Downfall of the Third Reich for no reason. Okay, so there's going to be that element to it. So that light hypothetical, I think, is probably the best way to categorize it. And again, this is speculation based on what the developer said and things like that, and from hearing about gameplay and kind of reading some other things on the internets and stuff like that. So I've yet to play, but that's kind of what I've kind of been able to glean from what I've learned so far. Let's take a look now at the map, and I will show a zoomed out version of this. This is the same exact size, super thick, nice mounted map board here, but the same size as Downfall of Empires, which is roughly 23.5 inches on the vertical and then 33.5 inches on the horizontal here. So really kind of very manageable footprint, nice thick counters. I love, again, the subdued palette. I feel like this with the counters is just a real nice design decision, and the design vision of this from an artistic sense feels really good. And I'll show close-ups again as we kind of talk about some of these things. Again, we've got area movement, and we can see there's a lot more kind of going on here in terms of you know, markers on the maps and stuff. We don't have the trenches, of course, that we have in Downfall of Empires. They're not there. We do have some supply zones, so like Bucharest down here, we can see some oil. Grozny, we can see some oil again. And I think if you control these, I believe they give you some bonuses. Likewise, up in Trondheim, we have a coal kind of hopper, and I think that again signifies resources that are going to give you benefits. So as the Axis forces, what you're trying to do, of course, earlier in the game, I think, is where do you spend those resources and how are you going to try to get those production bonuses that will give you a little bit more of an edge in combat. And then we have key cities here, Kharkov, Kiev, Minsk, all over the place. And submarines and strategic bombing, I believe, are handled more from a mission, kind of an abstract standpoint. So you're going to have counters in designated mission spots, but you're not going to be moving around the oceans here to kind of fight battles on the sea. It's handled more in kind of an abstract manner. The actual combat of the game is the land combat that handles here in kind of on the continent itself. And we do have down, you know, the map spans again, Grozny in the east, Kazakhstan in the east. So it can go, it looks like it can go considerably past Moscow here if you're the Germans. So perhaps if you're concentrating your forces in the east, you have the capacity to knock the Russians out of the game here. We do have Greece, Italy, North Africa, Ireland, the United Kingdom, and all the way up to Trondheim in the northern part of Italy. And then Spain, again, is out of play. It's neutral here on the west side of the map, but we do have an entire map of France as well to give an idea of scope and scale on the map here. But yeah, very beautiful, elegant game. I'm very excited to get both this one and its brother, Downfall of Empires, to the table here. I've been looking forward to these for a while. I think there's something to be said. You know, I don't think if I mentioned the complexity, but this is probably a good time to talk about that a little bit. I think there's something to be said for a grand strategic game that offers some depth of replayability in terms of the choices that you make, that's playable in a single setting, that's accessible to newcomers to wargaming, and yet offers enough depth and strategy and replayability to appeal to kind of the more grognardy of the viewers on the channel. So I think this game has the potential to be something kind of really fun and special, especially if you're looking to introduce new people to the hobby or just want something where you can play a grand strategic game in a single setting, which is a single sitting, which is kind of a fun and enticing way to spend an evening, I think. So this again is a review copy, as is Downfall of Empire. So I'll be bringing some gameplay content. It's going in the queue for the review 2-copy game, so there's a few of them there. It'll take a little while, but I'm very excited to kind of show some gameplay for this as time moves forward here. Let me know if you have, oh, one last thing I should mention too. I didn't mention, I don't think, the numerical value on complexity. I have a note here to do that. I meant to do that as I went through the rule book. I'm going to guess the same as Downfall of Empires. I'm going to say a 3. I have a sense this one feels, just because of a little bit more complex mechanics, I'm going to go maybe a 3.5, but I don't think so. I think it's just slightly more complicated than Downfall of Empires. But again, that comes from just kind of glancing through the rule book and seeing what kind of mechanics are there, and not from really playing. But certainly not something that's going to overwhelm people. And we did take a look at the rule book there in terms of the length and things like that too. So thank you so much for watching. I'm happy to entertain comments and thoughts down below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I'll put a link to our unboxing of Downfall of Empires, as well as link to subsequent videos that show gameplay in this as we move forward with it in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.